Deconverted Man here. I've been watching Underlings for quite some time. He makes good content, interesting content. Don't always agree with everything, of course, as you should. Weigh things that people say carefully and try to see if what they said is valid or sound or opinion versus fact, and so on. So he put out a video, the worst candidate for president, and I'm predicting he's going to talk about Trump. A lot of people have done so. There's some strong feelings going around in this particular election cycle against the current president. There was strong feelings before, and I would assume there's going to be strong feelings after he wins. And I'm making my prediction that Trump will win. Whether that's good or not remains to be seen. I don't have this existential fear that I've observed to be kind of present in some rhetoric that I've heard and read. It's like, oh, if he wins, that's it. We're all screwed. Just like anything that he does could be undone in the next 4 years. So by the next guy that comes along or the next gal that comes along. So why the frenzy? Why are you so afraid? Do you really think that he's going to do something that makes it that he stays in power forever? Or what is it that you're really afraid of? Like, what policies do you think that he'll make that can't be undone? And certainly there could be policies that he makes that can't be undone. But what are you afraid of? So, I don't know. Certainly there's the question of who's the best candidate. I think that's a better way to approach it. We've heard from Biden, we've heard from Trump. There's other people running for Republican and Democrat that we don't hear from at all. And then there's, of course, people running for other parties that you barely hear anything from. Now, Strozel interviewed one of them. So we don't get to hear from these people at all. So if you really want who to vote for, it should be, let's focus on the people that are also running. And of course you got the one guy with a shoe on his head that runs every time. Libertarianism. That's the party I was trying to think of. The Libertarian Party. So are these a good vote? Nah. I don't know. If you're not going to vote either way, then might as well vote for one of them. But who has the most chance out of that? I don't know. If your vote really mattered in that sense, then, vote for who you want, not against who you don't want. It seems to be a better strategy. But for whatever reason, the media, by and large, has kind of pushed us towards, and we've been stuck in a two-party system. Independent is very hard for them to win. It's very hard for major party to win. At least this seat. Other seats, not so much. How do we want to encourage or discourage people from voting one way or the other? That's one reason why politics is a thing, right? We want people to go and vote in the first place, and this is the first time I've voted in years. And went, poked the screen, got a little printout, put the printout in another machine that then read the thing and said, "Is this what you voted for?" "Yeah." "Okay, you're done." Like, okay, that was that was a whole thing. And the last time I had voted, it was with pen and paper. It was filling in circles and having that recorded, and it doesn't feel like you actually do anything. I think that's a part of the problem with voting is you feel like you're not doing anything, and you feel like it doesn't matter. I think the electoral college is one of those things that makes it ultimately feel like I'm not really being counted. Um, but this is the system that we have until any of that changes. Okay, all that aside, now my thing is logic. You all know that. That's it. Do you have a logically coherent argument or not? That's all that matters. Whether you agree that Trump is or is not the worst candidate for president or the worst president is set to the side. We have to do that. Might not want to do that, but you have to do that to be able to critically analyze anything. This particular YouTuber is really good, typically, at making, I would say, well thought out content that explores ideas, usually about cults. So I expect him to have sources that he may or may not have. There's only 2 links here in the description, but okay, in the description he says he's amassed 14 pages of outline along list the incidents adding up to the world's worst candidate for president. There's no time to properly organize and present them before the election, but there's enough to make a decent argument on whether one should vote for Trump or Biden. And my personal take before going into any sort of analysis would just be, I think it probably would have been better to say, here's why you should vote for this guy rather than why you shouldn't vote for the other guy. But any tactic might work for all I know. So who knows? But that, again, set to the side, doesn't matter. Is what he's going to present us a valid and sound argumentation? We're going to, of course, you can watch the original video. I encourage you to do so. If you're not subscribed, go subscribe to him if you want. Whatever you want to do there, do that. So I'll be stopping the video and asking critical questions for us to consider and think about and talk about. And because I'm the one talking, I'll do my best. I might miss something. I might, whatever, but let's try this. Okay.
Hi, folks. I don't usually make overtly political videos, but right now I feel the need to make an exception. A few years ago, I started collecting news stories on Trump's unpresidential, unethical, and otherwise unacceptable behavior. I had intended to have it handy for an argument with one of my many Trump supporting neighbors, but that never actually came about. Still, I kept adding to the document, intending to properly organize it, update it with any stories I may have missed, provide all the appropriate sources, and generally polish it up to create a video showing just how many problems there have been with this presidency that most of us have forgotten in the constant media churn. Well, this project became a victim of its own success. There is just too much information for me to get this done right and in time for the election, and reading through the entire list would take way too damn long anyway. So rather than do nothing with it, I've decided to release my unfinished notes as a series of screenshots. You can pause the video to view them if you're interested. And if requested, I'll make a link to the Word document available in the description bar. But there is one thing from my notes that I would like to read here because to me it represents the greatest threat posed by this president. This is from a 2003 article listing the common characteristics of 7 past fascist regimes, including Nazi Germany and fascist Italy. Powerful and continuing.
Okay, so he's read through a number of news articles and has these things as sources. I have questions about that. He has this, massive document. Take too long to go through all of it. That's understandable. Yeah, it might be that he can't outsource it to others, or doesn't want to, or what have you. Who knows? It seems like something that he cared about, but didn't focus enough time or energy on. Perhaps Um, regardless, this is something that he was working on, but just ran out of time for. Okay. Um, so there's this screenshot. Let's see if I can go back to it. Let's see. I know it's past this. Hold on. Let's see. Fact checker. Blah blah blah. Okay, here we go. So a bunch of different things that happened. Now, where did you get this information from? Well, he already told us. Got it from news organizations. I asked, did you then check into those things to make sure that those things really happened? Because it matters. The news can say that something happened and it didn't really happen, or it didn't happen the way that they reported it happening. Oh, this is the thing that happened, but that's not exactly what's going on. Life found on Venus. Well, no, life wasn't found on Venus. That's what the news headline said. The paper reports that they found a thing that might indicate life, although the more skeptical scientists out there will say, you might be going a little bit too far with that, because you haven't really eliminated other causes for this. It seems that maybe you put life might be there to get attention to this paper that otherwise might not have gotten any attention to it. And so we have to pull back on our enthusiasm when exploring any given topic, especially one that we're going to be emotionally passionate about. So that's a problem with or a potential problem with all these claims being made, is maybe they happen, maybe they don't. I don't know. But right now it's not available unless we request it. Well, of course, I'm going to request this whole thing so I can look through it. But I'd also want to know the sources and verify those if possible. Some of this, you could say, well, yes, that's true. Other of it, it depends on the context. Like I just happened to noted, recommended the use of chloroquine to treat COVID-19 against medical advice. Did he actually recommend that? Like, I know that he said, well, what about this? Or, we've tried that and it seems to have good effects or whatever. Did he actually say, I am recommending that the people do this as the president? Or is it that he said it seems to be working? Is that a recommendation? So the question there is a question of context. And this is something I've noticed that reporters are really good at doing. They'll say, oh, look, he said this, so that's a recommendation. The moment he uttered, well, what about, the thing with whatever it was about, chlorine or whatever, isn't that good? Or, for cleaning things, why don't we try that? And the medical experts like, no. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Okay, granted. Sure, but he didn't recommend that anybody inject, cleaning products into them, but I saw stories that said that he did. So, what are the facts? The fact is he said X, but we're going to say that he said Z. So, is that fair? Is that really a recommendation? So those are the sort of critical questions we'd have to ask about these things. Okay. So rather long list of different things that and some of this, I gotta say, some of this seems a good case. Some of this seems like, why is this here? Why is this a problem? Like, advocate of birthism against Obama. Okay, that was stupid. Once I think there was a preponderance of evidence at which it was kind of dumb to keep Harkby on it, and Trump did pass by that. But so what? Like, okay, is that really makes him not a candidate for the United States? Like where are these rules coming from? Anyway, so whatever. So here's a list of failures, briefly shown on screen. Failed businesses. Okay. But is that relevant to being a politician? What, why did these fail? And is it that did they fail because of him? Did they fail for other reasons? What do you mean by failed? What is the association, causation, connection between that and candidacy for president? Does that mean that if anyone fails in any other business before they're president, that they're not a candidate for president? What is first, what is the requirements for being a candidate for the president? The only actual in law is 18 and born in USA. That's it. No, it's not 18. It's 35. 35 and being born in the United States. That's what makes you eligible to run for president. Nothing else is written down. So if we're going to say, well, you have to have certain requirements to run, fine, fair enough. Then what are those requirements, and how did you decide on those requirements? So those are all critical questions I would ask. But they're not covered here because this is not that. So instead, we're going to talk about these warning signs of fascism. Now, where did this list come from? I believe he has a link for that. No, maybe not. Who decided that this is the list, the definitive list? How do we determine that these are actually going on? Like, what degree does something have to actually meet this requirement? Would this apply to the other person? Is this something that applies nationally across the board? So many questions about this sort of list, because we're going to say, do we as a country have these warning signs? And if we do, is that because of the president? Is that because of the United States? Is that because of people? And to what degree do we have these? And should we also have a warning signs of socialism, and a warning signs of capitalism, and a warning signs of fill in the blank? Shouldn't we also examine lists like that and see if we're also going towards that way as well, so that we have an even out view of things? Well, no, because we're focused on this one person. We're focused on why Trump is bad. Okay, great. So are we saying Trump is fascist? Okay, that might be what you're trying to say. And then you're using this list to try to prove that Trump is fascist. But there's a lot of questions left unanswered. And, that this is something that we need to examine. There's a lot of information that needs to be presented here. So here's the list. Let's go over it first. Powerful and continuing expression of nationalism. Okay. Disdain it for the importance of human rights. identification of enemies slash scapegoats as a unifying cause, the supremacy of the military or avid militarism, rampant sexism, a controlled mass media, obsession with national security, religion and ruling elite tied together, power of corporations protected, power of labor suppressed or eliminated, disdain and suppression of intellectuals and the arts, obsession with crime and punishment, rampant cronyism and corruption, and fraudulent elections. Okay, well, all that's pretty bad. Now, certainly we know that when we examine this in Nazi Germany, all of this was true. All of it at the same time. And it was true to such an extent that looking back, it's easy to see that now. But does that mean that if they'd had this list then, that they could have done anything about it? You know, again, these critical questions that should be asked are not being asked. But nonetheless, we're going to accept this list as fact, and we're going to then see if the facts, even though we haven't established them as fact, we're going to see if Trump, since we're saddling Trump with being a fascist here, apparently, does he have these things? And also, what degree does he have them? And of course, we should do the same with Biden. But again, we're only going to focus on the one guy. So we're not going to do that. So here's his point for the first one. You know what I am? I'm a nationalist, okay? I'm a nationalist. That's a quote apparently Trump said. Sounds like something Trump said. Don't know when he said it or where he said it or in what regard, but that's okay. Here's an out-of-context quote that apparently supports the proof that he fulfilled number one. I don't know. It doesn't seem like that powerful, and you only have one example, but, okay, sure. That's all we need is one example to make our point, right? I mean, again, maybe he is a nationalist, but is this all you've got? Well, he's got more. It's just this is the one that he's chosen. So is this the best argument that he has? Why not put the best argument forward? Give us a number of examples. Okay.
Italy. Powerful and continuing expressions of nationalism. From the prominent displays of flags and bunting to the ubiquitous lapel pins, the fervor to show patriotic nationalism, both on the part of the regime itself and of its citizens caught up in its frenzy, was always obvious. Catchy slogans, pride in the military, and demands for unity were common themes in expressing this nationalism.
Okay, so again, in and of itself, nationalism may or may not be a good thing, and it depends on how much it is. The wearing the American flag thing, that's been a tradition for, I don't even know when that got started or how long it's been around. Are we saying that we don't want the candidates to do this anymore? Are we saying that we don't want the American flags put on the stage during debates about who's going to be in charge of the nation? The flag is a representation of the nation to some degree. So are we saying we want this lowered? Because if you have too much of it, then that is bad. So what are we saying here? That's my question. That's my open question for all of you. How much is too much? What makes it over the line, and where is that line established, and why? And these are open questions for us to potentially discuss later on, when be it in the comment section or your own videos or what have you, or open discussion. But just from a critical standpoint, all I'm doing is asking these critical questions to this particular presentation.
It was usually coupled with a suspicion of things foreign that often bordered on xenophobia. Disdain for the importance of human rights. The regimes themselves viewed human rights as of little value and a hindrance to realizing the objectives of the ruling elite. Through clever use of propaganda, the population was brought to accept these human rights abuses by marginalizing, even demonizing, those being targeted.
Okay, so we have the quote here about the Mexico's police and military unable to stop the caravan headed to the southern border of the United States. Criminals and unknown Middle Easterners are mixed in. That statement, in and of itself, has nothing to do with human rights. It's just a statement. Whether it's factual or not is another matter. But I see nothing in that statement to indicate a disdain for human rights. The protection of borders, broadly speaking, is something that a lot of countries are worried about these days. A lot of places are concerned with this in general, past, present, and perhaps future. So, are we saying that closing or opening the borders is a sign of human rights violations? Is that what we're saying here? Because I'm trying to find the association causation that would link together. Look, he said this thing that I don't like about the borders, and therefore that's against human rights. If he had said, let's kill all the Mexicans that come across the border, I think that would be against human rights. Anybody that crosses that border illegally, we're going to just kill them. End of story. We're undone. We're just going to have, guys with guns ready for you. If you cross the border, you're shot. No questions asked. Let's put them in internment camps, and strip away their freedom. That would seem more like what I would think human rights violation would be. But again, we're just trying to ask critical questions of what's being presented here. So is this a disdain for the importance of human rights? That's the question we have to ask. This particular example being given, I don't think so. I don't see how this particular example on screen is an example of disdain for human rights. Whether you agree or disagree with having an open or a closed border or being concerned with the treatment of people trying to come into the country. So let's try to be as charitable as possible. So they're suffering over here and they want to come here so that they stop suffering. And we're saying, well, too bad, go suffer. Is that a disdain for human rights? It might be at that point. Maybe you're saying, well, you're not considering their rights, but well, what about everybody else? Maybe you're weighing it that way. So there's all these critical questions that we have to ask and answer. It's one thing to say, I want all these people to come in, and get the help that they need to get. There's lots of people all over the world that need help. Can't help them all. We can help some of them, though. Okay, how many can we help? And how do we help them? And is helping them going to make my life a living nightmare? Do I want to help them? So do I want to invite these strangers into my home to live with me? If not, why not? Am I now committing acts against human rights? Or is that different? Well, look, we give them a house. We give them a job. Who gives them a house? Who gives them a job? Right. So there's all these questions that we have to ask and answer to determine whether the border stuff has anything to do with human rights. Are those questions being asked and answered here? No. We're given a short snippet. This is an example. Does this example qualify? I don't think so. Maybe you think it does.
When abuse was egregious, the tactic was to use secrecy, denial, and disinformation. Identification of enemies, scapegoats as a unifying cause. The most significant common thread among these regimes was the use of scapegoating as a means to divert the people's attention from other problems, to shift blame for failures, and to channel frustration in controlled directions. The methods of choice, relentless propaganda, and disinformation were usually effective.
Okay. Let's see, where am I? Hey, pretty damn good, compelling argument for this particular number here. So, identification of the enemy or the scapegoat as a unifying cause. This is a broad brush statement that Trump apparently made at some point. A vote for any Democrat in 2020 is a vote for the rise of radical socialism, the destruction of the American dream. Any? That's a universal claim there. You're going to have to show that that's true across the board. There might be certainly some, whether Democrat or Republican or anything else for that matter, that will tend towards socialism. But any? That's a bit of an extraordinary claim. And so you haven't supported that claim. Of course, we don't know the rest of the context of what he said here. Did he say this at a rally? Did he say this as the, who knows when he said it? But he said it. So we do have a good example here of something that you could certainly say that's him identifying the enemy. Don't vote for them because they're bad. That's not a logical argument. They're all bad all the time. Definitely not a logical argument. Definitely something to give one pause. So this argument seems to stand pretty darn well from that one example. Of course, more examples would make it a stronger argument. But nonetheless, you seem to have identified this particular thing with this particular example. At least in my view, again, all of this is debatable because I'm just trying to critically analyze this to the best that I'm able to. So it does seem like you've done association causation. This is here's the enemy. The enemy is X. Don't do this because of Z, and in this case, Z is an appeal to consequence and an extraordinary appeal with a universal claim that you haven't shown to be true. So for all of these reasons, I think that you've nailed number 3. So good example there. Well done. So
often the regimes would incite spontaneous acts against the target scapegoats, usually communists, socialists, liberals, Jews, ethnic and racial minorities, traditional national enemies, members of other religions, secularists, homosexuals, and terrorists. Active opponents of these regimes were inevitably labeled as terrorists and dealt with accordingly. The supremacy of the military, avid militarism. Ruling elites always identified closely with the military and the industrial infrastructure that supported it. A disproportionate share of national resources was allocated to the military, even when domestic needs were acute. The military was seen as an expression of nationalism and was used whenever possible to assert national goals, intimidate other nations, and increase the power and prestige of the ruling elite.
Okay, so did we see that at all? And is that something that we have an example of here? The quote about North Korea, best not make any more threats to U.S. They will be met with fire and fury of the world, like the world's never seen. Okay, that's a statement that Trump made, potentially, possibly at some point. Where did he actually mobilize the military? Did all of the ships that we have, and we have a lot of ships in the Navy, did all of the fighters, did all the things get mobilized and start going towards North Korea? No. Did any of them position themselves around or near North Korea? Maybe. But that would have been a good example. If you'd had some examples of that sort of thing, then I think you'd have a better example here. Just a kind of empty shake my fist at you, you better leave us alone, doesn't seem that that's really a qualification of this. How much money had been spent on the military in Trump's time versus in Obama's time versus in some other president's time? Is it more? How much more? Are we seeing parades of military people all the time, or just at select times when we would expect to see them? Are we seeing the military celebrated like all the time? Are we seeing pressure to join the military all over the place? These are the sort of signs that I think that we're looking for when we're looking for the supremacy of the military or militarism. Not the, hey, we're going to get you guys if you do anything about us kind of thing. That's like, yeah, maybe somebody else would have said it a different way. Perhaps Obama would be like, hey, North Korea, leave us alone. I can't do Obama. I can't imitate any of these presidents except for Reagan. Well, I wish that they would be nice to us. I don't know what you say. But at any rate, so does this one example here give us an example of the supremacy of the military? Barely. I mean, it's such a soft, like, waving of the fist. I don't know. No, I don't think so. It's just, if you want to make this argument for the supremacy of the military or avid militarism, there has to be better quotes than this to choose from. There has to be a better example than this. But this is the example he went with. This example just doesn't really impress me as being qualified for number 4. But you could say that's subjective, and fair enough. Critical analysis sometimes is subjective in that sense. But again, we have to ask the questions of, does this thing meet the requirements of this other thing? Of course, the other thing, of course, the list in itself is still something that we're just tentatively granting. So let's not forget about that. But nonetheless, the softest approach I could go, I guess I'd say that this almost qualifies, but very low. Like it's not going to be it's going to be like a barely pass. Like if I was to rank these or something like that. That actually might be a good approach rather than just saying pass or fail, because I've said fail for the first 2. The third one worked. This one seems like it's going to fail. Well, it's too late now. That's the system I went with at the start, and I guess I'm stuck with it, and I'd have to go back and reanalyze it and rank everything. Which I might do, because it's good to reanalyze things. Of course, I'd do it on my own. I wouldn't bother you guys with it, but guys and gals and robots, sorry. But at any rate, so this seems to fail.
Rampant sexism. Beyond the simple fact that the political elite and the national culture were male-dominated, these regimes inevitably viewed women as second-class citizens. They were adamantly anti-abortion and also homophobic. These attitudes were usually codified in draconian laws that enjoyed strong support by the orthodox religion of the country, thus lending the regime cover for its abuses.
Of all the examples that you might have had for this, rampant sexism. Rampant sexism. But here's the one quote. He wasn't president when this happened, right? Like, he wasn't even running for president when this happened. So I don't think that quote qualifies at all for this. Yes, it's sexist. Certainly, I'll grant that. But this is something that he said before he ran, I think, if I'm correct. Let me know if I'm not. I might be getting the timeline wrong. But I think that I'm correct that this is before the election even took place. So when did Trump say let's see. When was that? Let's see. October 7th, during the election. Remember the conversation. Yeah, but when did the conversation take place? 2005. Okay, so way back in 2005 is when this particular conversation happened. So that has absolutely nothing to do with with now. He did not say this in public. This was something he said when he thought he was in private. Now he was being recorded, so it got out, but he didn't say it as part of the campaign, didn't say it as something we should do, didn't say that. In fact, when he talked about this, I remember him saying, hey, look, I never said I was perfect. This isn't what the race is about. Let's move on. Right. It has absolutely nothing to do with the race. Oh, I said something way back when that was bad. Oh, well, I guess I'm a bad person forever. It's really a weak attack on the person rather than the politics. This is not an example of rampant sexism. The other things listed that could have been examples of rampant sexism are also not being displayed. So this fails.
Cover for its abuses. A controlled mass media. Under some of the regimes, the mass media were under strict direct control and could be relied upon never to stray from the party line. Other regimes exercised more subtle power to ensure media orthodoxy. Methods included the control of licensing and access to resources, economic pressure, appeals to patriotism, and implied threats. The leaders of the mass media were often politically compatible with the power elite. The result was usually success in keeping the general public unaware of the regime's excesses.
Okay, so that last line that he said about the media being pro the current person, I don't think that's happening even a little. I mean, the media seems to be biased, if anything, more left than right. Although, you have Fox News, you have the outliners, whatever. But broadly speaking, the media doesn't like Trump. I think that that's a fair statement to make. If this was happening, we would see the media being closed. We wouldn't hear from the left at all. That's what would be happening. If the media was being controlled, you would never hear anything bad about the president or Republicans ever. That would be it. They'd just be silent. It wouldn't, and anything you did hear would be positive. That's when this is a thing. That's when you need to get worried. Is the mass media controlled? Probably in the sense that they're controlled within their own organization and somebody owns that organization, but that somebody isn't the president. So if the president was, called out or had attempted to buy Fox News or buy CNN or whatever, then I think that there would be certainly a cause for alarm at that point. If somebody connected to Trump bought media outlets, I think that might be cause for concern. But here again, we have this one example where he's saying something about the media to this media person. But notice that we get to see what he said and hear what he said to the media person. This isn't buried under the rug and had to be found out by somebody later on. This didn't come out in an expose or a whistleblower. This is public information. Everybody knows that he doesn't like the media when broadly speaking. And he has pointed out that some media is fake news. Of course, we got that term. Well, maybe that term existed before him, but he popularized it, I think. And it might be the case that some news is fake or useless news or not even qualifies as news. This particular example is not the best example you could have given of him trying to control media or, in fact, asking for control of media. Do you have an example of when Trump said the media needs to shut up and we need to stop the media from saying things about me? No, he said, I don't like it. Has he ever called for silence of the media or for restrictions to the media or for curtailing of the media? Certainly here he's saying, I'm trying to discredit you, but that's not controlling the media. You're not telling them they're not allowed to say things. You're just fighting against what they say. You're using your free speech against their free speech. So this isn't a controlled mass media in that sense. Therefore, this example has to fail.
Success in keeping the general public unaware of the regime's excesses. Obsession with national security. Inevitably, a national security apparatus was under direct control of the ruling elite. It was usually an instrument of oppression, operating in secrecy and beyond any constraints. Its actions were justified under the rubric of protecting national security, and questioning its activities was portrayed as unpatriotic or even treasonous. Religion and ruling elite.
Okay, so obsession with national security. And the example here, if a city or state refuses to take the actions that are necessary to defend the life and property of their residents, they'll employ the United States military and quickly solve the problem for them. Okay. So is that being obsessed with national security? That one quote? Like, to make the case that that's a overarching theme would be, I think that no, no, you failed on that one. I mean, even taking what is said here, if a city or state refuses to take actions that are necessary to defend the life and property of their residents, I will deploy the United States military and quickly solve the problem for them. So he defending life and property is good. Deploying the military to fix that problem, not so good. But because it's out of context, I don't know what that quote is about. I don't know if it has anything to do, like, is he saying that about us? Like, if California doesn't do whatever's necessary, then I'll send in the military. Is that what he's saying here? If so, then that's pretty bad, or could be seen as bad. But then again, if California isn't doing anything to help its citizens, then what are we supposed to do? Are we supposed to let that happen? Or are we supposed to do something about it? If the police are overwhelmed, was it what's the thing that you can declare? The military rule, oh God, whatever it's called. For example, Portland. When Portland was having all its problems, I guess they're still having problems, to call out all the military there, right? That didn't happen. Had it happened, I think you would have had a wonderful example of an overstep. Although I still don't know that that's an obsession with national security. An obsession would be more like, we have to protect ourselves and everything and everybody at all and hide your kids and hide your wife and get some guns. I just don't see that happening here, the rhetoric. And so did your point of number 7 doesn't seem to pass here. The argument so far is not working. This doesn't succeed at being an example of that. and maybe you have a better example, but then why wouldn't you use the best example possible for the obsession with national security? Perhaps you didn't have one. So I think that this one doesn't really pass.
As unpatriotic or even treasonous. Religion and ruling elite tied together. Unlike communist regimes, the fascist and proto-fascist regimes were never proclaimed as godless by their opponents. In fact, most of the regimes attached themselves to the predominant religion of the country and chose to portray themselves as militant defenders of that religion. The fact that the ruling elite's behavior was incompatible with the precepts of the religion was generally swept under the rug. Propaganda kept up the illusion that the ruling elites were defenders of the faith and opponents of the godless. A perception was manufactured that opposing the power elite was tantamount to an attack on religion.
Okay. The statement by in and of itself that he's making here is bad. Christianity will have power. I don't know what you mean by that, and I don't like the sound of that. Which version of Christianity, though? There's plenty of versions. If I'm there, you're going to have plenty of power. You don't need anybody else. You're going to have somebody representing you very, very well. Remember that. Sounds like something you would say at a rally. I don't like that statement. I don't like that statement no matter what religion or non-religion. I think that the Bible, which I presume is what he's holding here, you can't even really tell what book it is. I think that these artifacts should be put away for politicians in whole. You shouldn't see them meet with church leaders, period. You shouldn't see them go to, if they go to church or whatever, I guess that's going to be covered, but maybe they could have a private ceremony in the White House so that nobody gets to see what religion they have, because I think religion should be completely and wholly separate from politics. End of story. It shouldn't appear at all what religion you are. Nobody should be allowed, maybe, well, I don't want to say allowed, but nobody should say maybe what their religion is. Like, that should have no place in politics at all whatsoever. That could be a rule. It's not a rule, but it could be. So what about the elite? Well, is the elite tied with religion? Certainly Catholicism is, but we don't have that here for Christianity. There's no big giant. There is a lot of Christians with a lot of power already, and I don't like that. It makes me nervous. So is this I see it as a problem. Do I see it as religion and the ruling elite tied together? Barely. I'm going to say pass on this, only because I don't want religion in politics at all. So, but it's a very tentative pass on this. So 2 so far out of the points that you've had so far, I've agreed with as far as my analysis. And again, you can go, I think you could have certainly better examples of this particular thing happening or have happened. Other politicians have made big deals of religion, some more than others, and I think it should just not have any place. But there's a lot of voters who happen to be Christians, so you need their votes, and they will vote for you if you say you're a Christian. So most presidents have given lip service to being Christian, even if they weren't, or even if they're not. I don't think that Trump is Christian. I don't know. I mean, I have no idea. But I do not see him using Christianity or any other religion as a part of his normal day-to-day president stuff. Like, this is almost like is this a one-off or is this happening all the time? But because I don't like it, and then there's my feelings, so you got to be careful about that. I'm going to say pass, but barely. I guess, yeah.
The power elite was tantamount to an attack on religion. Power of corporations protected. Although the personal life of ordinary citizens was under strict control, the ability of large corporations to operate in relative freedom was not compromised. The ruling elites saw the corporate structure as a way to not only ensure military production in developed states, but also as an additional means of social control. Members of the economic elite were often pampered by the political elite to ensure a continued mutuality of interests, especially in the repression of have-not citizens.
Okay. I don't have a lot to say about this. Power of corporations protected. Here we have tax being cut. That doesn't seem to be anything to do with the power of the corporation being protected. It's something that may or may not be a good idea. It's something that may or may not be good for the American people. I don't know. I don't see it that you're protecting corporation power here. You're cutting taxes, okay? And would raising taxes be the opposite then? And would that be good? What? I don't know. I don't see it here. So no, you didn't convince me of this one.
Interests, especially in the repression of have-not citizens. Power of labor suppressed or eliminated. Since organized labor was seen as the one power center that could challenge the political hegemony of the ruling elite and its corporate allies, it was inevitably crushed or made powerless. The poor formed an underclass, viewed with suspicion or outright contempt. Under some regimes, being poor was considered akin to a vice.
Yeah, none of the things that you just said are happening. So this one quote that we've got about the union and him fighting against unions. He fight against unions very hard. And whether unions are good or bad is a topic in and of itself. How much, once a union gets too much power, that's bad. Just like anything else. You don't want the corporation to have all the power. You want the workers to have some say in something, but you don't, you have to have some sort of balance. So he fought against unions, but what does that have to do with being suppressing of labor or getting rid of labor in full? You can still get labor and not be part of a union, and some people would rather not have unions. Some people do. Sometimes, what does it say that you have to be part of a union for some places? That might be bad. Of course, Walmart is a example of a corporation that's fought very hard to not let its workers unionize, and that's a bad thing, perhaps. But is this really suppression of labor? Did we see suppression of labor happen during President Trump's term? Was there elimination of labor? Were any unions destroyed by Trump during his presidency? Did he fight against them actively? Certainly he said he did, or in the past. Is he doing that now? Is he saying he's going to do it? No? Then no. No. So it's not looking good for this list, but almost done.
Under some regimes, being poor was considered akin to a vice. Disdain and suppression of intellectuals and the arts. Intellectuals and the inherent freedom of ideas and expression associated with them were anathema to these regimes. Intellectual and academic freedom were considered subversive to national security and the patriotic ideal. Universities were tightly controlled, politically unreliable faculty harassed or eliminated. Unorthodox ideas or expressions of dissent were strongly attacked, silenced, or crushed. To these regimes, art and literature should serve the national interest, or they had no right to exist.
Right, and none of that's happening. Okay, you've got Trump saying a thing about modern art being a con, and that the painters are better salesmen promoter than their artists. Modern art is crap. I mean, but that's subjective. Maybe you like modern art, maybe you don't. So this is completely subjective. That doesn't really matter. What matters is, did he actually oppress modern art, or any art for that matter, and say, no more modern art, get rid of it, burn it down, tear it down? No, he didn't. Come on. So no, you're reaching here, you're desperate here. No to this one.
Obsession with crime and punishment. Most of these regimes maintained draconian systems of criminal justice with huge prison populations. The police were often glorified and had almost unchecked power, leading to rampant abuse. Normal and political crime were often merged into trumped-up criminal charges and sometimes used against political opponents of the regime. Fear and hatred of criminals or traitors was often promoted among the population as an excuse for more police power.
That's gracious. And none of that's happening. Actually, yeah, I actually agree. We have to bring back law and order. Certainly Portland needs some of that. That's just gone crazy over there. We do now see a good example of this would be the fact that America has the biggest prison population in the world. But that's not Trump's fault. It's been that way for a while. It shouldn't be that way. We should have a mass reform of the judge of the system as a whole. The from the top down. But we don't, and nobody has really fought for those things as a president per se that I'm aware of. I view that as a problem. The most free nation in the world has the most amount of people behind bars, and they're behind bars, maybe for good reason, but maybe really for petty reasons. Oh, you haven't paid an child support. I guess you're going to go to jail. Yeah, you can go to jail for that. What? How does that? So how are you going to pay for anything if you're in jail? It doesn't make sense. So, but is that an obsession with crime or punishment? Look, there's crime everywhere in the country. No, he's not saying that. We have to punish the criminals worse, more longer sentences, more sentences. Not saying that. So, and he hasn't said that. So, no, not even close on this one. I do think that we need to reform the justice system, but that's my own aside. That's nothing to do with the analysis, so I have to leave it to the side. But no, this one doesn't work. Try harder.
Voted among the population as an excuse for more police power. Rampant cronyism and corruption. Those in business circles and close to the power elite often use...
You all just got a lot richer. Well, come on, though. This might be true of politics in general, not just true of Trump, but yes. Rampant cronyism and corruption. Yeah, in politics, it does happen a lot, and it shouldn't. And I don't know where to place the blame for that. Probably special interest groups. I don't know. Whatever. But this isn't really a good example of that. And Is it really a good? Well, I mean, you could bring up Hillary stuff. There's some stuff going on there, but whatever, okay, sure, why not?
Used their position to enrich themselves. This corruption worked both ways. The power elite would receive financial gifts and property from the economic elite, who in turn would gain the benefit of government favoritism. Members of the power elite were in a position to obtain vast wealth from other sources as well, for example, by stealing national resources. With the national security apparatus under control and the media muzzled, this corruption was largely unconstrained and not well understood by the general population.
Yeah, and none of that's happening. So I think that trying to find an example of that, yeah, to be aware of what's going on, but I think you're grasping at straws here. So no to that one. Are we almost done? How many more?
Fraudulent elections. Elections in the form of plebiscites or public opinion polls were usually bogus. When actual elections with candidates were held, they would usually be perverted by the power elite to get the desired result. Common methods included maintaining control of the election machinery, intimidating and disenfranchising opposition voters, destroying or disallowing legal votes, and, as a last resort, turning to a judiciary beholden to the power elite.
That's not what's happening. Both sides have been hammering pretty hard at different things for how the voting should take place. Mail-in ballots, whether maybe you think that they're good or bad or something else, I don't know. Maybe they've been shown to be, maybe the process isn't very good. I don't know. It does seem like that the voting process is something that needs a huge overhaul and update. The one that I did seemed very modern, and we're a small nothing town. So if we have it, I don't imagine that other places don't have something more modern by now. But at any rate, certainly it's a concern, but I just don't see. I don't see this being actual attacks against things. That is to say, Trump isn't like taking away, like, the statement of that mail-in ballots fraud may or may not be true. Okay. If it's true, then that's bad. If it's not true, then it's bad that Trump said that it was true. Okay. And then he said the absentee ballots are fine because you have to go through a system on them. So it seems like he's saying vote this way because it's more reliable than the other way. So to be fraudulent, it would seem to me that you wouldn't care which way people voted as long as they voted for you. This seems like more I want it to be fair than I want it to be about me. And if it was really fascist, it would be you're voting for me and that's it. And that's not what's going on. Whether he's right or not, it's a separate issue.
Last resort, turning to a judiciary beholden to the power elite. So, does that sound familiar?
No.
Our country is founded on principles that are anathema to fascism, and we've strongly opposed it throughout much of our history. We even fought a world war against fascism. So when we have a president who shows all the warning signs of fascism,
but he doesn't,
we need to kick him out of office. And
jeez. No, that's not how it works. You didn't show that the president has all those warning things. You got, what did I say, 3 out of it maybe, and one of those I barely granted, so 2 maybe. And as far as kicking him out of office, you don't just get to decide that. That's not how that works either. we have elections. So if I apply this list to Biden and I can find these statements to be equally or plausibly true of Biden, then we can't have Biden as president either. And then we should kick him out. And then, whatever list that that can be devised, and whoever devises it, if we find that it all applies, and we can just kick people out, well, so much for democracy then. Then we have a list governing things, don't we? The rest of this video is, I dare say, propaganda. As an argument. And that's what this whole video has been about. I saw many of you talking about, who to vote for or why, and what's going on or whatever. That's not what this is about. I'm not saying vote for or against Trump. I don't care. That's irrelevant. Vote for whoever you want. Vote for the guy with the shoe on his head. I forget what his name is. Whatever. Doesn't matter. What matters to me is the argument. The argument being made here is not a good argument. Just is not. Now, Underlings usually does really good videos, really good arguments about cults and about other things that I don't know that much about. And I really like those videos because he goes into great detail and he examines and he asks and answers the critical questions. Is this a fascist thing? Or fascist? Is this a cult thing? And he'll answer the question using a list that's not like this. Actually, it's more than just a list. It's actually paragraphs of criteria for being a cult or not. And he does pretty well with that. But when it comes to politics, well, if this video is an example, he's not doing very well at making the sort of case that he normally would make against or for somebody being a cult. Say, this person's a cult, here's why. This person or this group is not a cult, and here's why. And so I don't know why it didn't happen for this politic video. I have my suspicions and my speculations on that, but that's not relevant to a critical analysis. What matters for a critical analysis is the thing being argued for valid or not? If not, then I have to be skeptical of it, and if so, then I have to worry about it. Now, you must ask these questions about the things, and you must try to address them. Who wrote this when? Who said it when? Did they actually do the thing that they said, or did they just say it? Did they encourage other people to say it, or do it, or did they, or what? What's the context, and what, all of these questions. And it doesn't matter what it's about, whether it's politics or religion or science or philosophy or whatever. We have to be willing and able to ask the critical questions, to challenge what we believe and hold to that is most dear. Love or hate any individual or group, put that to the side. What is it that the group claims? Are those claims correct at all? Is some of the claim correct to some degree, or is it all a bunch of baloney? If we cannot challenge what we hold most dear, then that could be a problem. And all I can do is say, here's an example of a bad argument. Now, if I find a good argument, then there's really not a lot to say. It's like, yeah, you're right, good argument, we're done. So it's easier to find an argument that is broken and say that it's broken than to say, well, here's an argument, there's nothing wrong with it, because you're not really gonna pick apart anything. So I don't want you walking away with thinking, oh, Deacon Birdman's saying Trump, go Trump. No, I don't care. doesn't matter. I don't know that even your vote counts. I think you should vote. I don't know why I think you should vote, but I do think you should vote. And you should vote using logic and reason to the best degree that you're able to. So I'm not supporting or against anybody here in this video. And you're perfectly free to analyze the video I analyzed and come to your own conclusions about it. In fact, I hope that people do that, because you're going to have ideas that I didn't necessarily have. And when doing critical analysis, we're digging in. Did this thing do the thing that it needed to do? If yes, here's why. No, here's why. And maybe you don't think I did a good job of that. And you might be right. Point it out. How could I have done better at answering those questions? Was I critical enough or not? And the subject matter in and of itself shouldn't matter. That is to say, oh, it's about Trump, so therefore whatever. No, it shouldn't matter. Whatever it's about, I try to apply this system to all the things. It's just this happened to be a thing I found to do that on. But because it's politics, so anyways, that's it, I guess. Lot of stuff in chat. I don't know. I think some of it I should respond to, I suppose. So I decided to vote for the candidate who will get fewer American citizens killed. Okay, good. I would want that as well. I'm not sure how we would decide who that is, but okay. Who happened to be the one that gives us greater chance of having future elections. Okay. I don't think either candidate is against future elections, but okay. Knowing how many people listen to him, shouldn't the president be expected to be careful about what he says and how his followers are likely to take it? Yeah, maybe. It's not actually codified into the law, one way or the other. And is it more of a moral thing than it is a legal thing? I don't know. Once you make a thing a law, it's really weird how that plays out sometimes. I don't follow Twitter anymore. I got rid of my Twitter, so I don't care what the guy says on Twitter. I think it's more important what he does than what he says, but that's just me. Maybe there should be more care given from a leader than is being given. And there's a decent argument to be made there. But that argument wasn't made in this video. And so, what can I say there? Okay, so the failed businesses matter because the campaign was based on you run the country like you ran the business. Yeah, that seems like a good objection to make. It's too bad it wasn't made in the video itself. That seems like a good objection that should have been made in the video itself. A good argument. There's an example of a good argument to make. So here's why this matters. So now you're showing association causation between the two. This matters because of that. And that wasn't done in the video. You're supposed to just know that that's the case. No, you have to make the argument without assuming that you don't want your audience making the argument for you. That's at least not within logic. And I suppose you could say this isn't really a logical argument, and whatever. Are all types of fascism equal? I don't know. Probably not. I mean, there's degrees of everything, isn't there? I don't know. We're definitely seeing that Trump is fascist. He refused to denounce an organization that set up a plot to kidnap legitimately affected. I don't know what that's in reference to. So If it is a good objection, it should have been in this video, and it wasn't. So that's the problem, is that the good objections that you are making aren't in the video, and they should have been. So haven't seen a nationalist like Trump before. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, anyways, looks like a disdain for human lives to me. So that's in reference to the border stuff, I guess. I don't know. It's hard to say, because you're saying, well, these people presumably are leaving because they need help, but you have to know that as a fact. Like, how do we determine that the person is really leaving wherever and coming here because they really need help? And there's a whole system for that. So if they're just coming in, they landed on the shore, and they risked their lives and limb to do so, they must have been really desperate, right? Or so the system that permits them entry might need to be seriously overhauled. So I do think that there's good arguments to be made for an overhaul to the system, but I think that there still has to be a system that you just let anyone randomly come to your shores. You have no idea why they came to your shores and if they actually do need help or not. And that could be a problem. So it's certainly worthwhile debating that sort of thing, and whether it's disdain for human lives might be completely in the realm of subjectivity, and so is something that you can disagree with on my critical analysis of that particular point. Obviously, you can critically analyze it yourself. And then, what's the American dream is incompatible with Democrats, and this is referencing the thing about Democrats way back when. The American dreams, well, I don't know. I guess it's who you ask, but it's been painted to me as being, anybody can start a business and get rich, that sort of thing. And, that you can, pull yourself up by the bootstraps and do it. And, you go out there and you work hard and you'll get money, and then you'll be able to have a good life, because it's not the money that gives you the good life. It's the thing that the money can get that gives you the good life, or whatever. But that the hard work will get you a result. That's the dream, I guess. I don't know. And no, it's not incompatible with Democrats. So I think that's part of why the point was given to the argument itself way back when. But yeah, these are good questions that everyone had in chat, good points to make. And hopefully I addressed your stuff. Obviously, later on, people might have more things to say at me in the comments, and I welcome that. Don't just look. I'm not telling you to vote for or against anybody here. All I'm doing is trying to analyze one video and say, is it a good argument or not? And my conclusion is this particular argument is not very good. There's two things out of the list that he got, and maybe three, and that's it. So that's not very good for my point. But if you have a logically coherent argument and you want to give me that, that's great. Please present it in full. Maybe you have sources for me to consider that you want to give links to. I'll look at that. I'll read it. If you have a video response to this, please make me aware of it so I can listen to what you have to say. If you want to have a conversation with me about this or any other topic, let me know, and I'm happy to do that whenever you want. Just give me like a day in advance. So let me know. Unless it's right now, like I'm awake right now, so I can do it right now if you wanted. But so anyways, thanks for listening. Let's be critical of all the things, including politics, including religion, all the things, everything. Be critical of me. Be critical of all the criticisms, and etc. Thanks for listening. And if I lose all the subs for this, oh well. Whatever at this point. Even though I was like, this isn't, I'm just doing the thing that I always do. I'm just applying it to something different. Oh, but you're for the guy that I don't like. No, I'm not for the guy that you don't like, but you're helping. No, I'm not doing that. No. Anyway, so yeah, the lobsters, vote for lobsters. Yeah, that's my position. Yeah. Finn, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, blah, 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 blah. All that stuff. Yeah.